The stores are gone. The shelves were stripped clean on day 3. Somebody got the last bag of all-purpose on day 2, and whoever they are, they're eating biscuits right now, while you're staring at a pile of acorns and wondering if your ancestors were idiots or geniuses. Spoiler, they were geniuses. And in the next few minutes, you're going to become one too. Flour isn't a product, it's a process. It's what happens when you take something starchy, something dry, and you grind it down until it stops being a whole thing and starts being a powder. That's it. That's the whole secret the food industry has been monetizing for 100 years. Your ancestors didn't have a grocery store. They had a river, a forest, and 2 rocks. And they built civilizations on bread made from what they found. So let's talk about what's around you right now, what's hiding in plain sight, and how to turn it into something that'll keep you fed long after the flour aisle is a distant memory. Let's start with acorns, because if you are anywhere in the northern hemisphere, you are surrounded by flour that falls from the sky every autumn. Acorns are calorie-dense, fat-rich, carbohydrate-heavy survival packages wrapped in a shell. The problem is tannins. Raw acorns taste like licking a chalkboard soaked in bitterness. They'll give you a stomachache and make you question your life choices. The solution is leaching. And once you understand it, you'll wonder why nobody talks about this more. Crack your acorns. Any flat rock will do for shelling, or use a sturdy boot on a hard surface. What you want is the inner nut meat, pale and dense. Grind or chop it rough first. You don't need a perfect powder yet. Then submerge the pieces in cold water. Change the water every few hours, or let a stream run through them if you're outside. The tannins dissolve into the water, and after 1 to 3 days of soaking and rinsing, longer for stronger bitterness, you'll have something that smells nutty, tastes mild, and is ready to dry and grind fine. Spread it on a flat rock in the sun, or dry it near a fire. Once dry, grind between 2 stones using a circular motion with the top stone, pressing down and rotating. Sift through a cloth if you have one. What falls through is your flour. Acorn flour is slightly sweet, slightly earthy, and nutritionally dense. It's been used across Native American tribes, ancient Europe, and East Asian cultures for millennia. It doesn't rise like wheat. It lacks gluten. But you're not making croissants. You're making flatbreads, porridge, and survival cakes. It works. And right now, working is everything. Next option, cattails. These are the brown, hot dog-shaped reeds growing in basically every marsh, pond edge, and wet ditch in the temperate world. If you walk past them without knowing what they are, you are walking past a survival supermarket. Every part is edible at some point in the season, but the part we want for flour is the pollen and the root starch. In late spring and early summer, the tops of cattail stalks produce a thick, yellow pollen. Shake it into a bag or a container. You can mix this pollen directly into dough as a flour supplement. It's not a full replacement on its own because it's very fine and produces a dense result. But mixed with other starch-based flours, it's extraordinarily nutritious. The root, the thick rhizome buried in the mud, is your main event. Pull the roots out. They look like thick, dirty fingers attached to the base of the plant. Wash off the mud. Peel the outer skin. Then mash the root in a container of water, working it with your hands until a white, starchy slurry forms. Strain the plant fiber out through a cloth or a piece of woven material. What you have left is the liquid starch. Let it sit. The starch settles to the bottom. Pour off the water carefully. Spread the wet starch cake onto a surface and let it dry completely. Break up the dried result and grind it fine. That is cattail root starch flour. It's about 30 to 46% carbohydrates. It bakes, it thickens, and it has been feeding people for 10,000 years. Archaeologists have found traces of cattail root flour on grinding stones dating back 30,000 years. 30,000 years. The people eating it weren't primitive. They were resourceful. Be resourceful. Now here's one that most people walk past every single day without a second thought. Dried corn. Not popcorn kernels from a microwave bag. Actual dried field corn. Dent corn, flint corn, or any heritage variety that's been allowed to dry fully on the cob. If you have any stored corn, any dried corn in your house, or any dry grain corn you can find, You are sitting on a flour source that fed entire continents for thousands of years before refrigerators existed. Masa, the basis of tortillas, tamales, and arepas, is made from corn that's been processed through a method called nixtamalization. And this is where things get interesting. Raw corn flour is nutritionally incomplete. The niacin, vitamin B3, is locked inside the corn in a form your body literally cannot absorb. Indigenous civilizations in Mesoamerica figured out how to unlock it by cooking dried corn kernels in water mixed with wood ash or calcium hydroxide, what we'd call lime or lye. This process is called nixtamal, and it transforms corn from a famine food into a nutritional powerhouse. The alkaline solution breaks down the outer hull, releases the niacin, increases the bioavailable protein, and makes the corn softer and easier to grind. Here's how you do it without a lab. Take a cup of dried corn kernels. Boil them in water with a tablespoon of wood ash from a clean hardwood fire. Not treated lumber, not charcoal, just ash from natural wood. Keep it simmering for about an hour. The outer hulls will loosen. Let it sit overnight. Rinse it thoroughly the next morning, rubbing the kernels between your hands to remove the hulls. What you have is called hominy. Grind it wet for masa dough, or dry it and grind it fine for corn flour. That corn flour will nourish you in a way that plain ground corn never could. Civilizations that had access to corn but didn't nixtamalize it, European settlers who imported corn without the indigenous preparation technique, developed pellagra, a niacin deficiency disease that causes diarrhea, dermatitis, dementia, and eventually death. 4 Ds, and then you're done. The people who taught them to cook corn properly saved lives by the thousands. Knowledge is nutrition. Let's talk about something even more local, the grass family. You might be looking at your lawn or a field right now and not realizing it's a grain source. Wild grasses produce seeds, and those seeds are starch. Not in quantities that make harvesting easy, but in a genuine survival situation, you harvest what's there. Wild rye, wild barley, foxtail grass, goosegrass, all of these produce small edible seeds. You strip the seed heads into a container, then winnow them by pouring slowly between 2 containers in a breeze, letting the lighter chaff blow away while the heavier seeds fall. Then you dry them, then you grind them. It's labor-intensive. You'll spend an hour harvesting what a supermarket sells for $1, but you'll spend that hour alive. If you're near a stream or wet meadow, look for wild rice. Not the commercial paddy rice, wild rice, zizania, grows along the edges of shallow freshwater. It's a tall aquatic grass with long, narrow seeds that are nutty, dense, and highly caloric. Canoe tribes in the Great Lakes region harvested it by paddling through the stands and beating the stalks over the side of the boat. You can adapt that process on foot. Hold a container under the seed heads and strip them forward. Dry the seeds, then parch them lightly in a pan or over fire to loosen the hulls. Grind them after removing the outer husks. Wild rice flour has a deep, slightly smoky, nutty flavor and more protein than wheat flour. It's not a myth. It's not a fallback. It's a real food source that sustained cultures for centuries. Now let's address something in your house that you probably aren't thinking of as a flour source. Dried legumes. Beans, lentils, dried peas. Grind them. That is flour. Chickpea flour, called gram flour or besan, is one of the most widely used flours in the world. India has been using it for thousands of years. You take dried chickpeas, you grind them between stones or in any mechanical grinder you have, you sift the result. Chickpea flour makes flatbreads, thickens stews, and binds ingredients together. Lentil flour is nearly identical in process. Black bean flour, navy bean flour, all of them work. Legume flours are high in protein, high in fiber, and they keep almost indefinitely when dry. If you have dried beans in your pantry right now, you have flour. You just don't know it yet. Same goes for dried potato. Dehydrated potato slices or potato chunks, or fresh potatoes that you can dry yourself, can be ground into potato flour. Peel and slice potatoes thin. Dry them in the sun, near a fire, in a very low oven if you still have power. Around 140 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit for several hours. Once brittle and completely dry, grind them. Potato flour absorbs a tremendous amount of moisture, so a little goes a long way. It's dense, filling, and neutral in flavor. Mixed with other flour sources, it stretches your supply significantly. Rice, if you have it, follows the same principle. Dry white rice can be ground into rice flour using any grinding method available. Rice flour is gluten-free, fine-textured, and works well for flatbreads, pancakes, and porridge thickeners. It's the base for a huge portion of Southeast Asian cuisine and has been for thousands of years without anyone needing a store. Now let's talk about grinding, because your grain doesn't become flour by wishing at it. You need a grinding mechanism, and that mechanism doesn't need to be electric, commercial, or sophisticated. The most primitive and effective tool is a saddle quern. 2 stones, one flat-bottomed and slightly concave, your base stone, and one handheld stone that fits comfortably in your palm. You place dried grain on the base stone and use the handheld stone to grind in a circular pressing motion using your body weight. It's slow, it's physically demanding, your arms will ache. Your flour will be coarse and will contain fine grit from the stones, which, historically, is why ancient humans had very worn teeth. But it works. It has worked for 30,000 years of human history, and it will work for you. Upgrade that system with a rotary quern if you can improvise one. 2 flat circular stones, one fixed, one rotating on top via a stick inserted through a central hole. The grain feeds through the center hole and is ground between the 2 stones as the top one turns. Native cultures worldwide developed this independently. The Romans used it across their empire. It produces a finer flour faster and with less effort. If you can find or shape 2 roughly circular flat stones and drill or chip a hole through the center of the top one, you have a machine that changed civilization. No stones? Look around. Concrete surfaces, brick surfaces, the bottom of a cast iron pan used as a grinding plate, a heavy glass bottle used as a rolling grinder against a hard surface, a meat tenderizer hammer. Anything hard and heavy can become a grinding tool if you're patient and your survival depends on it. Once you have your flour, whatever the source, whatever the grind, here's what you do with it. The most basic recipe is flatbread, and it requires 2 ingredients, your flour and water. Mix them into a stiff dough. Add a pinch of salt if you have it. Divide into balls. Press flat with your palm or a smooth rock. Cook on a hot, dry stone or a cast iron pan over fire. 2 to 3 minutes per side until the surface is dry and slightly charred. That is bread. That is the food that built every human civilization from the Fertile Crescent to the Americas. It requires no yeast, no leavening, no egg. Just starch, water, and heat. Add fat if you have it. Animal fat, oil, lard, whatever's available. And your flatbread becomes more caloric, more pliable, and harder to crack. Mix in dried herbs if you have them, and suddenly you have something that not only sustains you, but tastes like a decision rather than a defeat. If you want to leaven it, to make it rise slightly without commercial yeast, you need a sourdough starter. Mix equal parts flour and non-chlorinated water in a container. Leave it uncovered at room temperature. Stir it once a day. Within 3 to 7 days, wild yeast from the air and from the flour itself will colonize the mixture and begin to ferment. You'll see bubbles. You'll smell a sour, yeasty tang. Feed it daily by discarding half and adding fresh flour and water. Once it's reliably bubbly and active, mix it into your dough in place of commercial yeast. It rises more slowly, but it rises. And a sourdough starter, once established, can be kept alive indefinitely. Bakers have passed them down through generations. There are active starters today derived from cultures over 100 years old. Now here's the science underneath all of this, because understanding why it works makes you better at applying it. Flour is starch granules. When you combine starch with water and apply heat, those granules absorb moisture, swell, and gelatinize. They thicken, bind, and solidify. That's what makes bread cohesive rather than crumbly powder. The finer you grind, the more surface area, the better the water absorption, the more cohesive the result. Coarse flour makes rough, crumbly bread. Fine flour makes smooth, pliable dough. Your grinding effort directly translates to your eating quality. Protein content matters too. Wheat flour's gluten, that network of proteins that makes dough stretchy and elastic, is what traps gas bubbles from yeast, allowing bread to rise into an airy loaf. Acorn flour, cattail flour, potato flour, none of these have gluten. That's why your flatbreads from those sources will be dense and cracker-like. Not bad, not inferior, just different physics. To add some stretch to non-gluten flour, add a binding agent, a mashed cooked potato mixed into the dough, a small amount of gelatin from boiled bones, the mucilaginous liquid from boiled flax seeds. These mimic some of gluten's binding properties and improve the workability of your dough. And here's something most people never think about: caloric density of what you're eating. In a post-collapse scenario where you're burning more energy than you ever did before, hauling water, cutting wood, standing watch, surviving, you need dense calories. A cup of acorn flour has roughly 500 calories. A cup of corn flour has about 440 calories. A cup of cattail root starch has nearly 400 calories. These are not diet foods. They are survival fuels, engineered by nature over millions of years of plant evolution to store maximum energy in minimum space. Every flatbread you bake from foraged flour is a win measured in kilocalories. Every gram of starch you extract from a root or a seed is a day extended. There's also the psychological dimension, and don't dismiss it. Eating bread, something that resembles a familiar food, something baked, something warm, is an act of civilization. It's proof that you're not just surviving, you're maintaining. You're holding on to the idea that there's a future worth working toward. The smell of flatbread cooking on a hot stone is deeply, profoundly human. It's been calming anxiety and signaling safety for 30,000 years. It still works. Let it work. So here's where you are now. The store is gone. The shelves are empty. But the forest has acorns. The pond has cattails. The field has grass seed. Your pantry has dried beans and rice. The air has wild yeast. The riverbed has grinding stones. You are not helpless. You are not dependent. You are not finished. You are standing at the beginning of a very old skill set that kept the human species alive through ice ages, droughts, collapses, and catastrophes that make your current situation look manageable. Because it is manageable. The only thing that separates you from starvation and you from bread is knowledge, effort, and the stubborn refusal to believe that your food supply ended when the supply chain did. Grind something, anything, mix it with water, cook it on a hot surface, eat it. You're still here. Keep going.